Good morning to you. Hi there. Good morning. Hi there. We're continuing to look at Proverbs at the moment. And I think, as we've been sort of saying recently, the Proverbs are intended to be pithy. They're not necessarily intended to be precise, but they capture the mood of things. And I don't know about you, but as I've been looking at the Proverbs over the last few days again, I found myself just often getting a wry smile on my face as I read these very observant sayings about human nature and human life. They're almost kind of like Jane Austen-esque, aren't they? With their irony and their kind of observation, their shrewd observation of people, and sometimes tragic, sometimes ironic, but very telling. But appearing occasionally, proverbs appear to contradict each other. I don't know if you've noticed that. I mean, sometimes we get sayings in our world that appear to contradict each other. For example, I mean, let me give you an example. I can remember a few years ago, we used to go for lunch quite often to Elsie Brown's house. And Elsie Brown used to put on a fantastic lunch after church, invariably involving watercress soup as a starter. But as a family, we'd arrive and, she'd be busy away in the kitchen. And maybe if you sort of said to her, "Oh, Elsie, can we help you?" She would say, "Oh, no, 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 too many cooks spoil the broth." And then at the end of the meal, when we'd all finished, she would say, "Right, everyone, I need you to do some washing up. I need you to do some drying up. I need you to put the cutlery away. Many hands make light work, So these two sort of sayings, neither of them are in the Bible, by the way. But too many hands, too many cooks spoil the broth on the one hand, or many hands make light work on the other hand. They seem to contradict each other, but of course they don't. It depends on the setting and the context that they're being used in. And we find that. So, for example, in Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 4, and I think Joshua may have referred to this the other day. His thing yesterday I thought was excellent about long-term happiness, by the way. But in 26:4, it says this: "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes." So what do we do here? On the one hand, it says don't answer a fool. Uh, on the other hand, it says do, otherwise they'll be wise in their own eyes. So which is it? Well, these verses are deliberately put next to each other to sort of correct each other, if you like. And it goes to show that it depends on the setting you're in, it depends on the context as to which one of these proverbs would apply. But I think also it's telling us this, that there are different types of fool. There are foolish fools who, no matter how often you correct them, actually your correction will never pay dividends. In fact, it will only harm you in the end, if you cast your pearls before swine, if you like. But then, on the other hand, there is the kind of correctable fool. There is the winnable fool, and sometimes it is wise to speak to them and correct them because they are just a bit ignorant, and would be open to some help. Okay, so I want to just explore a little bit more this whole topic of foolishness, because I think if we understand what it means to be a fool, then we'll understand better what it means to be wise. And remember that as we point the finger at others and we think of others, and it's helpful for us to think, actually, yes, I know how to deal with that person now. But also, of course, we hold the mirror up to ourselves because we're aware that all of us have got folly bound up within us still, and we need to become more and more wise ourselves. But there are different types of fool. Let me give you three headings for three different types of fool. Okay. The first, and they all begin with S, and I've put these together for you. The first is the simple. The second is, if you like, the standard fool. And then the third is the scoffer. Okay. And they kind of get more and more serious as you move along the scale from the simple to the standard fool to the scoffer. So first of all, let's just think about the simple fool. Now, this is not talking about intelligence, certainly not mental intelligence. I've met people who may not have done loads of further education, but they're incredibly wise. I've also met some people who seem to be very intelligent and have done very well in the world, if you like, but actually are incredibly foolish. And so this isn't about intelligence. This is about emotional intelligence for sure. But it's about actually understanding God's ways and fearing God and being wise in the way that we handle things. But the simple person is gullible. I mean, you all know that they took the word gullible out of the dictionary, don't you? Um, but the gullible person will believe that, and they're easily led. They're naive. They're kind of irresponsible. They'll believe anything. It says in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 15. Proverbs 14 and verse 15 says that a simple man believes anything, but a prudent man gives thoughts to his steps. So a simple man will just take in anything. They'll believe anything. They don't think carefully about things. They just take it all in and don't think again about it. Now, the classic simple fool is found in Proverbs chapter 7. And there we read about this young man. And at the window of my house, I looked out through the lattice, it says in verse 6 of chapter 7. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men a youth who lacked judgment. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house at twilight as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in. And then came out a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute. So here's this simple-minded person, naive. He's in the wrong time of day to be in the wrong part of town, not thinking about his steps, walking along foolishly and just drifting along, ready to be trapped by somebody who's there waiting for him. And of course, it says at once he followed her. It says in verse 22, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose. This poor simple guy just being naive and stupid. And then it says, now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. And so here we have this encouragement that actually there is hope for this person, because the writer says, listen to what I'm saying so that you don't go that way. It is possible that this person could go the right way. They are still winnable. But in the end, for all of us, we cannot stand still. As Derek Kidner puts it like this, a man who is empty-headed will end up wrong-headed. It's a slope. And so you have to either become wise or you will end up being foolish. You can't stay simple forever, because you will be pulled in one direction or the other. So that's the first category, the simple. The second is the standard fool. This is the one that Proverbs talks about a lot. Do you know there's over 75 references to the fool in Proverbs? And this person, we can paint a bit of a quick picture of this person. This person is not patient in their search for wisdom. They like to just chase after fantasies, if you like. Oh, by the way, I made a reference to Welcome to the Hotel California. And of course, Kate was telling me the other day, I never knew this, that song is all about, you know, this house that looks very attractive with pink champagne and mirrors on the ceiling. But actually, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. It's about this simple person going into a house that's actually not like it looks like. Anyway, that was that reference. But going back to the fool, this fool chases after fantasies. And so in chapter 17 and verse 24, it tells us that a wicked, wait a minute, where is it? Sorry, got that wrong. 17 verse 24, chapter 17 verse 24. A discerning man keeps keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth. They're dreamers, but they don't have any concrete plans to make their dreams become a reality. They are just dreaming about the future. They're lazy. They lap up opinions without reflecting on them. In chapter 15 and verse 14, it says, the discerning heart seeks wisdom, but the mouth of a fool feeds on folly. So they're not discerning in what they listen to and what they take in to their minds and their hearts. And having just been undiscerning, they then gush out folly as well. And so it tells us that in verse 21, of folly delights a man who lacks judgment, but a man of understanding keeps a straight course. But this person just likes to express their opinions, to gush out their thoughts. They kind of eat junk foods, and then they kind of just gush out rubbish as well. So in chapter 15 and verse 2, chapter 15 verse 2, it says, the tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. They just gush out folly because that's all they've taken in. This sort of person can never imagine that they are mistaken. They could never possibly accept that they've got it wrong. They're too busy talking to ever stop and think that maybe they haven't got it right. And so in chapter 17 and verse 10, it says, a rebuke impresses a man of discernment, but more than 100 lashes a fool. A fool, a hardened fool, won't even hear things when they get beaten into them, when the hard knocks of life try to smash it into them, but they still don't get it. Whereas a wise man just hears a word and they're sensitive to it and they want to learn quickly from what they're being told. The root of a foolish person is spiritual. Ultimately, it is spiritual. They don't fear God. They just return like a dog to its vomit, as it says in Proverbs chapter 26. They don't fear God, and they are at best a waste of time. It says that you will find no sense in him in chapter 14 and verse 7. In 14 verse 7, it tells us that stay away from a foolish man, for you will not find knowledge on his lips. Okay, so you will not find a word of sense in him. You're kind of wasting your time listening to all his gushings out on the internet or in person. But at worst, of course, he is also dangerous. He likes to do a prank and then say, oh, I was only joking. But actually, he's caused quite a lot of harm in the process, as it tells us in chapter 26 and verse 19. He likes to pick a quarrel, as it says in chapter 18 and verse 6. A fool's lips bring him strife, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his undoing, and his lips are a snare to his soul. And so he kind of picks quarrels, he causes damage, he causes harm. And now we're told to avoid a fool, but actually sometimes we can't, because we have to work with them, or we have to live with them, hopefully not live with them, or we find that our own children can be foolish, and actually there's pain in that. I would say, though, that the prodigal son, the story that Jesus told, gives us hope that although in Proverbs there is very little hope for a hardened fool, we find in the story of the prodigal son the grace of God breaking through somebody who has ended up in the pigsty but ends up actually turning back to God and fearing his father and coming back. And so there is hope even for the fool in the gospel of Jesus Christ. But they are quarrelsome, they're difficult, and there is a classic example of a fool in the Bible in the man called Nabal. Nabal married to Abigail, and we read of Nabal in 1 Samuel chapter 25, and I'm drawing things to a close here, but 1 Samuel 25 tells us that Nabal was surly and mean in his dealings, and Abigail says of him that he is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. Nobody can get through to him. Nobody can get through because he's so wicked. And then she says that his name is he acts like a fool, and his name Nabal actually means fool. It actually does. Nabal is one of the words used for fool. He is a fool. Folly goes with him, and he's found later in the story drunk and in high spirits. He's just he's insensitive. He's loud. He thinks that he knows far more than he does. He's ignorant. He won't listen to anybody. And poor Abigail has to live with this guy who she's beautiful, she's wise, she's discreet, she understands nuances, she's careful about her speech. She's the total contrast. She is Lady Wisdom, if you like, next to the foolish man Nabal. Okay. Finally, let me just say there is one other type of fool, and that is the scoffer. So we've had the simple, we've had the standard fool, and then there is the scoffer. And the scoffer really is a troublemaker, someone who deliberately goes out to make trouble and difficulty. And you find with these kinds of people that really you can't win with them. Whatever you do, you're damned. And in a way, you need to be aware that sometimes in life there are those types of people, and it's not you that's done anything wrong, actually. They are just a scoffer. They're hell-bent on causing difficulty and trouble, and they are kind of beyond being able to respond or listen to anything. And actually we need to be clear and understand that there are those sorts of people. Now, God can break through, God can change them. And of course, God can change all of us. Let me encourage you today to be wise. Let me encourage you to not allow any foolish traits to be in your life. Be careful with your speech, be wise. And let's ask God to make us wise. Let's ask God to make our children wise, our teenagers, our 20-somethings, to grow in wisdom so that they become wise as they grow up, so that they know the favor of God and experience the blessing of God in their lives. So God bless you today, and thank you for joining me. Lord, I do pray that you would help us to be wise in our dealings with others, help us to know how to handle people who are foolish around us. Help us, oh God, also to be wise, to learn the ways of wisdom and to deal with folly in our own lives. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.